Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the Rick and Danny Show, presented by Cancer Specialists of North Florida.
You got that right, Rick.
Yeah, don't want to. We're just ignoring the old title completely. It
Yep.
never existed, and we're just updating our current feed, right?
Yes.
So we can
Yeah.
keep.
So technically, this is episode 28.
Okay, so we can keep the listenership we have now.
Yes.
Yep.
We're just morphing.
Right. And
Right.
so I think, speaking of listenership, I know I
Right.
joke sometimes that I feel like I'm talking into the abyss and maybe there aren't ears on the other end of this microphone, but I've been told that that is not the case. And we actually have some folks who...
We tell them every week.
We tell them all
We
the
tell
time.
them every week.
You do. I can't argue with you there. But
He just doesn't believe us.
I've
until we get emails.
we have emails that have been sent to us that aren't from your parents.
Correct.
Well,
But
she
did your-
didn't tell
but-
us who the emails
Yeah,
are
but did your
from,
parents send those in?
No.
Okay.
They're done.
Yeah, they're done.
One Boston sports email and it was enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got
My
it.
dad actually, they were doing yard work last week, and he
Okay.
texted me, and he was like, "Hey, kid, I listened to all the podcasts." And I said, What? We listen to so many. What are you talking about? He's like, "Your podcast." I'm like, "So you haven't been listening weekly?"
Aw.
He was like, "No, but I just listened to the whole backlog. It was really great." I'm like, "Okay."
Oh, that was nice of him. Shout out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Shout out
Thank
to
you for
Keithy.
listening.
Those are, I think, listeners like 1 and 2 probably.
They
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
OGs, is that what you call them?
The OGs.
Yeah.
So we've got the first email,
Mm-hmm.
and this is actually from a Kabrinsky patient.
Oh,
Okay.
So I'm gonna read it.
apologies in advance. You had to see Dr. Kabrinsky, mysterious
You know.
patient in the
You know.
ether.
I'm gonna read
Always
it,
so
and
mean
then
to me.
I'm gonna
A
read
kid,
it.
because I know you're amazing and I love
no,
you.
No, I know.
The bromance
Yeah,
is too much.
We're bros.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. You only hate on the ones you love.
That's true. Well, I appreciate that. Let's see what
I'm gonna read
this
this
mystery patient
I'm gonna
has
read
to-
this whole thing and just bleep out what you guys think I should bleep out.
Okay.
Like names and stuff.
All right.
Yeah, I would probably have no identifying
All right, I'm just gonna bleep
names.
it out.
Yeah, just no identifying
All right.
names.
Hello, all. I'm one of your very satisfied patients, Dr. Kabrinsky, and then in parentheses, Dr. Danny. Walked into my room at St. Vincent South, where I was recovering from blood clots in my lungs. I had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in October 2019 and operated on by Dr. So-and-so the day before Thanksgiving. We had just decided not to engage the first oncologist we met, and on the first meeting in the hospital decided to work with Dr. Kabrinsky. Pancreatic cancer returned as a small spot on my liver in 2021. Chemotherapy and now radiation therapy. When the cancer returned, I was angry and motivated to research alternative cancer options. Diet and exercise kept coming up in medical and non-medical sources as both additional and alternative options. Have you yet? I just discovered your YouTube presentations and am catching up. Discuss diet and exercise in a presentation. Thank you again. And that's, I'll bleep this out from.
Yes. No, I know him well. Still. Yeah, so this is a patient I know well. I think if we just talk a little bit about the case, it's unfortunately not an uncommon phenomenon to get recurrent pancreatic cancer after you've been treated definitively with surgery. And I think the fortunate part about this case is that it was an isolated oligometastatic recurrence, meaning it was a one location recurrence in the liver. And in a majority of these cases, the recommendation is to treat with more chemotherapy, and then what we opted to do was to deliver focal, high dose radiation or standard dose. I don't know how you describe it, Rick.
Yeah, you say hi to. SBRT, targeted radiation.
Targeted radiation to the metastasis in the liver. I did discuss with the surgeon about potentially doing a partial or kind of a wedge resection of the liver. I don't think there's a standard, approach to treating a recurrence like this, but pretty much I think all oncologists surveyed would recommend more chemotherapy. And this patient's just about done with therapy, which I'm excited for, and probably one of the most motivated patients I've seen. Really pays attention to health and doing things that are important for healthy lifestyle in terms of diet and exercise, And I do think and there have been studies to show that, focusing on diet and exercise during and after cancer treatment can be very beneficial to you.
Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of it in that
Yeah.
nutrition episode, but the one I keep coming back to is there's actual randomized evidence. This is in breast cancer, but
Mm-hmm.
healthy body weight, just body weight, maintaining a healthy, appropriate BMI, improves survival.
Yeah.
So independent of, what you get for your cancer, how advanced the cancer was, that's pretty powerful. I mean, there's not a lot of things that you could say do that. So I think there's to the person who wrote in, yes, diet and exercise are an extremely important part of doing well with cancer treatments. Whether the diet and exercise directly leads to you living longer, maybe not. But what it will, at the minimum, allow is for you to tolerate treatments better. If you're eating well, you're eating a balanced diet, you're being active, you're more likely to get through chemotherapy, get through radiation, get through surgery with less side effects, more, long-term quality of life benefits, because you're, doing these things that help mitigate some of the side effects of treatment.
Right.
So, but no, I agree with you. I mean, I think it sounds like everything in that case was, what you would do by the book. Pancreatic cancer, as most people know, is a aggressive cancer. It's can be a very lethal cancer. So unfortunately, we do see that despite throwing at the best of therapy, that there's a high risk of it popping back up.
Yeah, of recurrence. And interestingly, when I've looked into a few of the case series and such, that recurrences, and unfortunately you wish it wasn't like this, but whether it's a local recurrence or a distant recurrence, the survival rates don't seem to be too much different between the two.
It's interesting because, I think there's three, I guess, but at least what I've seen in my experience, and then also what I think is reported in the literature, the risk of metastatic spread in pancreatic cancer is so high, even in the smallest tumors in the earliest stage, that chemo is always probably, arguably outside of maybe surgery, the most important, backbone of treatment.
Right.
But it is interesting that you see there's pancreatic cancers that no matter what you throw at it locally, surgery, radiation, they just continue to grow locally, and that can be very morbid.
Right.
And then there's some that just, no matter what you throw at it systemically, just go aggressive and spread. So it's just, there seems to be, a dichotomy between the two, but it's just, a lot of them at least seem to have bad biology, whether locally bad biology or regionally distantly bad biology, which is very interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of them have different mutations that are even common in other tumor types, like KRAS mutations, which, overall is not a great mutation to have in terms of prognosis, in terms of case series 2. But now we're getting to a point where, to plug research again, where we're having more trials to try to target this, what we think is a driver mutation for why the cancer cells are growing. So, hopefully, and this patient, as well as a lot of our patients, bring up, what are some of the new therapies? Are there anything other than chemo that I can get to help, me live longer, potentially cure this? For pancreas, we're still in that searching phase, but I do think we do sometimes have some of these small trials that, if we did the genetic analysis and you're a candidate based on the gene mutation, that doesn't matter what tumor type, sometimes we can get patients on trial, which is cool.
Yeah, I think, pancreatic cancer is one where if there's a trial available to you, I would, strongly encourage it, because while our standard of care has gotten really actually exponentially better in the last decade or so, mainly driven by better therapies on your end, Danny, I think it's still a disease that unfortunately is very lethal, very deadly. So I think anything research-wise is could not only be a potentially boon for that individual patient, but also for the future of science and sort of advancement for this, highly lethal disease.
100%, yeah. Well, thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you.
We have one more. So this one says, Dr. Rick and Dr. Danny, first, thank you for making Cancer Specialist Medical Minute, the podcast formerly known as,
We're like Prince.
Yeah.
Yes.
Available on Spotify for everyone to listen to. My name's I'm a first-year medical student and was curious if you guys could...
Probably bleep out the name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I'm going to have to cut out you saying bleep out the name.
Just making sure.
Jesus.
If you want to
Start from
over,
start from the
that's
beginning.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, start from the beginning.
No, I'm going to cut it.
Just start from the beginning.
Dr. Rick and Dr. Danny. First, thank you for making Cancer Specialist Medical Minute podcast available on Spotify for everyone to listen to. My name's I'm a first-year medical student and was curious if you guys could briefly talk about what I could do as a medical student to be more competitive for a rad-onc residency. I've been listening to you guys since you started recording episodes and putting them on Spotify, and I love them. Thank you.
Thank you for the email. It's nice to know people are listening. Okay,
I
that's
told
two
you guys.
two verified listeners outside of
I
Brenna's
told
parents.
you guys.
I think
So we're up to
this
4.
is in Rick's wheelhouse
Well,
here.
your wives listen.
It's true. 5. And your family's listened too, right? Your wife?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
6?
A little
6.
bit.
All right. We're almost, we could get to 2 hands here pretty soon.
Yeah, Mary Alice listens.
7. All right. We're rocking and
We
rolling.
can make this
And-
kind of a 2-part answer. One's of how do you
Yeah, I can
become successful to be competitive for residencies generally.
Yeah, I think.
And
I mean, we
then-
can talk about Radonc a little bit, but I
And
think
then Radonc
to me this is a
specifically.
a question of what do you do when you're in MS1?
Right.
I think 2 ways we got to approach this question. One is how do you, I guess, find a specialty when you're in MS1? How do you become competitive, like you said, in general for residency? And then number 2, I can talk obviously about Radonc. I think most medical students when they go in to medicine maybe have some inkling of what they think they want to do, but I was the kind that I didn't. So I think to me, in my opinion, one of the most important parts about medical school is go in with an open mind. Even if you think you're dead set on being a surgeon or a GI doctor or whatever, I think going in with an open mind will allow you to not only learn better, so you focus more rather than saying, well, this isn't relevant to what I think I want to do long term, so I'm not going to listen, which will help you be a better doctor if you kind of take everything in.
You may not put the same effort in certain rotations.
Right,
and
or you
things.
just know that maybe I'm not going to
Yeah.
focus as much because it.
Right.
But I think it hurts you as a clinician long term because
Right.
you lose that background. And then number 2 is guess what? You may change your mind. You may fall in love with something you didn't even know was there. And then obviously there's the other aspect of, am I competitive for certain things as you get to that point. So I can give you my experience with that, and then obviously Danny,
Yeah.
please give us yours. But
Yeah.
I went in with a very open mind to medical school. I didn't know what kind of doctor I wanted to be. I thought I wanted to do something with cancer. Like most people, I've had a lot of family members affected by cancer, and so I thought that's where my intellectual curiosity always was. But I didn't know if I wanted to be a surgeon or a radiation or med-onc. Truth of the matter is I didn't even know what radiation oncology was when I entered medical school. So I definitely did not go in with a notion that this is what I wanted to do. But I went tried to go into every rotation with an open mind and learn. And, I got lucky in the sense that the University of Florida has a great radiation department in Gainesville, and so they have a lot of personalities that I attach myself to. That I kind of just fell in love with it that way.
How early was that? Was that not first and second year, or
It was
more third,
kind
fourth
of
year?
middle to end of second year.
Second year,
I did a
yeah.
little shadowing just to see what it was, because
Right.
I knew you're not going to see it as a third year. Obviously, it's not part of your core
Right.
rotation. So I went and I did it. And I said, oh, this is kind of cool. But then I kind of put it on the back burner, and I did surgery and everything else like everyone else does. And I just kept coming back to it at the end and just going, well, did I like it more than that? Well, maybe not. So,
Right.
but that's how I ended up there. It wasn't anything pre-planned, or I knew years in advance. And I can get into the specifics later. But Danny, I'm curious, what's your experience of when you first started your education pathway? Did you know this is what you wanted to do, or was
No.
it kind of just
Yeah.
how did you figure it out, navigate the system?
Yeah, hemonc. No, I definitely didn't think I was going to be a hematologist oncologist from starting med school. I think I was pretty sure I wasn't going to be a surgeon. I never really had a drive to be a surgeon, but I think I went into it with an open mind, like you said. And initially, actually, I had little bit of interest in being an ophthalmologist, which is kind of, I don't know where that came from. I think my dad's friend was an ophthalmologist, and I had like shadowed him a couple times, and I was like, oh, this might be kind of
That's what
cool
you knew
to do. But then, yeah, you first 2 years, I mean, you're learning a ton. It's a lot of studying, and it's not a lot of clinical work, obviously. And I think in third year, again, I kind of knew after my surgery rotations that I wasn't going to go into a general surgery residency just based on my interest, and I thought I'd probably go into internal medicine just to kind of figure out what I wanted to do specialty wise, and I thought I would want to be a specialist, but I wasn't sure exactly what it would be. And then it wasn't really till fourth year med school that I went on my away rotations and did some different rotations. I did endocrine, I did hemonc,
like
I did
sub-Is at different places.
sub-Is at different locations. So I traveled, and I think a lot of people, and I don't know the landscape now, I think because when COVID hit, not as many people did away rotations, but certainly I went, the first half of my fourth year was traveling around the U.S. doing away rotations. And I went to osteopathic medical school, so you kind of have to decide, are you going to do an osteopathic residency, or are you going to do an allopathic MD residency at different schools? And there's not one right answer. I think it really depends on what your goals are. I think if you're going to go into a specialized field, it is really what your interest is. I think if you have any interest in doing basic science research or clinical research, and you want to be in academics for your career, then you're probably going to go into more of the big centers like UF, or maybe apply to those type of residencies, which are more allopathic residencies. But if your goal is not to be in academics, and then you could go either osteopathic or allopathic MD in your residency. So for osteopathic med student, that's kind of what you decide. And it's also how competitive the residency that you're striving for, for radonc being a competitive residency. And if you're an osteopathic med student, you may not apply to an allopathic radonc residency necessarily. And I know that was true for derm, and I'm not talking exclusively,
Yeah, right.
but a lot of osteopathic med students did not apply to MD, dermatology residencies, ophthalmology residencies, ortho residencies, because they were just almost impossible to get into.
Yeah, you're fighting whether it's fair or not, a perceived uphill battle.
There's maybe a little bit of bias, but it's just there's so many people applying to those,
well, that's what I mean,
that you kind of have to stay within your own designation. So, but for internal medicine, like what I went into, I applied to mainly allopathic programs, because my thinking was, if I was going to specialize, there's more programs in the allopathic world that I can apply to regardless of what fellowship it is. And that's why I did that. So
no, it's good. I mean, I think, it's a nice summary. I mean, I think when I applied to radiation oncology, it was definitely in its competitive heyday.
Right.
So there were a lot more hoops to jump through. I did away rotations as a fourth year to different radonc programs, some, chart research at my home program. So there was a lot of, a dog and pony show, if you will, of it. I think, again, my ears aren't to the ground, but my understanding especially relevant to the person who wrote in, my understanding is the competitiveness of radiation oncology has gone down actually quite significantly in terms of getting in, because the number of programs has increased.
I see.
So, we can obviously have that debate whether that's good or bad for the future, but the denominator is now higher. So I think the good news is, if this is a field you're interested in as a very niche field, I think it's going to be easier for folks to get into. But to the listener, like I said, to the person who wrote in my opinion, don't pigeonhole yourself to radonc as an MS1. Definitely keep it in the back of your mind if that's what you're interested in, and you've explored it and you've shadowed it and you like it. But definitely try to go into everything with an open mind. And then in the back of your mind, still do things in radonc. If you want to do research with whoever in that department, or you want to do away rotations, that's totally fine. But don't shortchange yourself when you experience, everything else, because you just don't know what you don't know. And I hate to say it, but as an MS1, you don't really know because you haven't been on those rotations in the thick of it, learning what you like and don't like.
Yeah.
Because I played sports my whole life. I think everyone, when I went into medical school, people just assumed I would be an orthopedic surgeon. So I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. Maybe I'll do that, and then I can maybe be an orthopedic oncologist because that combines cancer and orthopedics. And then I did an orthopedic rotation, and I thought it was cool, but I was like, not for me.
Right.
So I think you just gotta go in with an open mind and be true to yourself, and ask yourself what do you see yourself doing kind of as a career,
Right.
and exploring it that way.
Yeah, you definitely get a better feel for the residency that you may want to pursue in third and fourth year, I think.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, a lot of it's hard too because like a lot of it's based on the mentors that you have, and so you could really love something, but there's bad mentors at your institution, and
Right.
that sucks. Or it's hard to like it when if you're around people that aren't the best mentors versus maybe you fall in love with a mentor in a specialty you're not maybe never really considered, but you love this mentor, and so that's how you so it's a lot of it's just kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy how random and circumstantial a lot of it is.
Yeah. If there's an opportunity for an elective third year, I think it would be reasonable to do it third year and actually rotate with somebody, because then fourth year comes and you kind of sort of got to know your path at that point.
Yeah. You definitely have to
and
at least.
Then you're showing face and trying to, make sure people know who you are when you apply for residency.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But to the listener, I mean, I think the good news is the competitiveness for you, if this is what you want to do, I think the competitiveness of RadOnc is not what it was. So I don't anticipate, hopefully, there being much of an issue matching eventually. But again, you have a lot of time before that matching point. So as an MS1, do your best to be open to anything.
Yeah. I think setting yourself up in, studying, getting the baseline knowledge and doing well in your tests and making good connections early are kind of the main points. Don't be the quiet one. Make sure people know who you are, and you want to make sure that you establish some good physician connections along the way.
Yeah, then don't be afraid to ask for, if some, you don't have to be as direct as, will you be my mentor? But you can ask people, say, hey, do you mind if I follow you an extra day in clinic? Do you mind if we sit down and grab a cup of coffee and tell me about what's going on? I mean, I think most physicians at an academic center hopefully should be amenable to that, because that's part of their job is education, teaching, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, because I mean, these physicians sometimes, and you don't realize at the time, but you have a letter written by so and so, and they're not only on a national committee, but they're editing a journal, and you may not know all this information. They know people across the U.S. and they're writing you a letter. That's going to go a long way at multiple programs if they see that name pop up and they write you a good letter. So, just making these connections and whatever field you decide you're going into is going to be helpful.
So hopefully that helped the listener. Very long-winded way of answering their question, but I think we did it.
What do you think, Brenna?
I think it was great.
Good.
Brenna, you've been on your phone this whole time.
I've been listening.
Okay.
I think she's been TikToking.
Yeah, if she decides to go to med school, she's
Brenna's
got some advice.
Brenna, third career?
No.
She's like,
absolutely not.
She's like, I've seen you this up and close. I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need that stress.
I'll stick with the
Got
marketing.
my own stress. Well, thank you everyone for listening to our second episode of the Rick and Danny Show. What do you think, Rick? How'd it go?
I think it went good. We took some emails, which I think was nice. It's nice to hear, again, sound like a broken record, but people are listening.
Send us questions, comments. We're happy to
Hey guys, Producer Bernie here, coming at you from the Pod Loft. At the time of our recording, we did not have social media, but we have it now, thankfully. So I wanted to cut this in here. You can find us on Twitter at Rick Danny Show, on Facebook and Instagram at Rick and Danny Show, and on YouTube at The Rick and Danny Show. If you have any questions, comments, dad jokes you want to share, if you're Dunkin' Donuts and you want to sponsor us, you can send us an email to rickandannyshow@gmail.com. As always, we're available wherever podcasts are found, and please make sure you rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really helps us in the charts. We need to prove to Rick that we do in fact have listeners.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Mahalo.